Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler. I am the host and the founder of the Order of Man podcast and movement. Welcome here and welcome back. I've been looking at our download numbers over the past 3 weeks or so, and I've been happy to report that our podcast download numbers are up over the past time frame. But today I have to announce that our podcast download numbers are down. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is because it's being throttled. All right, guys, our accounts, our podcast, our social media channels, they're all being throttled. So it's an indicator that we're on the right path. I don't like to paint myself as a victim or play the victim card at all. But what I am telling you is the reality of the situation is that Instagram is limiting our account. YouTube is throttling our accounts. Now it appears that the Apple podcasts are limiting our reach and availability, because I've seen a sharp and drastic decrease in the number of people who are apparently listening to our podcast. And it's not coincidence that all this stuff is happening together. So this is not about playing the victim. This is not about even necessarily complaining. It's about coming up with a plan to make sure that we overcome this, and we will overcome this. But I need you to share the shit out of what we're doing here. It's as simple as that. I need you guys to share. I need you guys to comment. I need you guys to post. I need you to take screenshots. I need you to tag me if you can. Instagram won't let you guys tag me. It's infuriating at this point. And again, I'm not here to complain and gripe and bitch and moan, because what we've been able to do over the past 6 years has been pretty incredible. But I think we're on their radar. And when I say they, I'm talking about our social media overlords who would love nothing more than for us to toe the line, do what we're told, sit down, shut up, color within the lines, and be the good little boys that they would have us be. I'm not interested in that. You're not interested in that. So I need to ask for your help. I need to enlist you guys. I hope that you've been getting value over the past 6 years, or however long you've been connected to what we're doing here. But I need you to help. So step up, help, share, comment, post, talk about it. Tag me if you can, subscribe, download, leave ratings and reviews. You guys all know how to do it. Yeah, it's going to take a little time on your part, but like I said, I've been adding value hopefully to your life for the past 6 years. So please ante up as well. I've put the ante up on my end. I'm asking you guys to put the ante up on your end, and it doesn't take very much or very many resources on your part. It just takes a few minutes to do whatever you can do to share what we're doing here. Okay. And with that said, let's get into the meat of the discussion. Today, I'm going to be talking about maintaining our frame, because it's very important that we maintain our frame. And I've seen a lot of guys break down and completely undermine their own ability to perform and their own ability to influence other people and to get what it is they want and to produce results for other people in their lives. Now, I've been thinking about this concept as it comes in some lessons that I've learned in Jiu-Jitsu. And so there's this concept of framing in Jiu-Jitsu. And basically a frame is essentially different moves, different things that you can do to keep your opponent from advancing their position. So for example, a frame in Jiu-Jitsu might be that somebody has mounted you and they're going to try to move up and up and up to try to incapacitate you to some degree. And your job is to maintain your frame. That might be with your arms and your forearm. That could be with keeping a knee between you and your opponent, something between you and your opponent so that you don't completely crumble, break down, they advance their position, and then they have the advantage. So this also applies to real life. And we as men need to maintain our frames, because as I said a second ago, I've seen so many men crumble and break down and let people manipulate them and get taken advantage of. They don't even know what's happening. They have no insight into what's happening. And it causes some fallout, some real problems for these individuals. If you are the kind of guy who lets people walk all over you, step all over you, is constantly apologizing, you feel like you're the nice guy, as Robert Glover would say in his book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, then it might be that you're losing your frame. And you need to find a way to maintain that frame, to maintain who you are as a man, to keep your position as a man, and then to have the authority and ultimate influence over other individuals who you would like to serve. And that is an important distinction and an important word that I used right there. I said to serve. Guys, this is not about manipulating people. This is not about coercing people. This is not about getting people to do exclusively what you want them to do. This is about serving others. And who are those other people? It's your sons. It's your daughters. It's your wife. It's your clients. It's your employees. But you need to maintain and establish some boundaries. And you need to make sure that your frame is where it needs to be so that people can't take advantage of you and you have positioned yourself for ultimate success. Financial success, physical, health success, success in your relationship, success in all of your endeavors. So I've identified 7 points that I wanted to share with you today that will help you maintain your frame. And ultimately, more importantly than that, will help you, A, feel more like a man. And that's what we want. We want to feel like a man. John Eldredge, in his book, Wild at Heart, says that all men are attempting to answer the question, do I have what it takes? And a critical component of this is your ability to maintain frame, your position, your status, your influence, your authority, your credibility with other people. If that crumbles at the slightest sign of adversity, then people are going to look at you less favorably and you're going to feel uncomfortable or inadequate, and you will not be able to answer the question in the affirmative, do I have what it takes? So let's break this down. Number one, know that people are going to work against you. Know that people are going to work against you. Some of this is deliberate and intentional, and some of it is subconscious. Some of it is that there's just conflicting goals and desires and ambitions. So this isn't always devious. It's not always deceitful. It's not always that people are out to get you, but know that people are going to, at times, work against you. Your children, let me give you an example. Your children are going to work against you. My son, my oldest son, he's 13 years old. And right now he's pushing the buttons. He's testing. He's experimenting. He's seeing where the lines are. He's trying to gain some authority over his own life, which actually is a healthy thing. But when it goes too far, he's trying to actively work against me as his father, my wife as his mother, and the dynamic of the family. It's not devious. It's not deceitful. In fact, it's completely natural. But the frame as the father needs to be maintained. And so there's some work that I need to do. You might have a client, for example, who thinks or misunderstands the relationship. You know, a lot of us have been fed this line that the customer is always right. Well, that isn't true. You know, if somebody hires me as a coach or a consultant, they're hiring me because they want my expertise and my insight and my input. And if I just assume that that customer is always right, am I going to be able to show up effectively as a coach for that individual? Well, no, probably not. So is the customer always right? No. In fact, the customer is seldom right, because if they were right and knew everything about what you want to do, they wouldn't have to hire you in whatever capacity to be able to assist them in what they need. When it comes to your employees, they have their own personal goals and desires and ambitions. And in many cases, those align with yours. And in many cases, they don't. And you do need to acknowledge when they do and do not align with you. And you need to maintain that frame. And you need to understand that people are going to either A, intentionally and deliberately work against you because they don't want you to succeed, or they're trying to push you down and they want to get up, or they're going to subconsciously do it because their desire, as in the case of my son, for example, their desire, which is completely natural and right, doesn't necessarily align with yours. But you can't maintain your frame unless you know that people are subconsciously, or even in some cases, intentionally working against you. The first step is always acknowledgement, whether we're talking about maintaining our frame or we're talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. It's always to acknowledge that there's a problem, that there's a conflict of interest here. So that's point number one. And point number two is in alignment with this, is that you have to evaluate what people are doing and why. You need to know their motives. You need to know their intentions, because if you know what it is, then you can accurately assess what your plan of action is going to be moving forward. So let's go back to the example with my son. My son, who's 13 years old, he's a young man. He's got the testosterone flowing and pumping, and it's being developed, and he's acting on that. Completely natural. In fact, I'm glad. That's what I want to see. I want to see him come into his own. So his intention, whether he realizes it or not, is to test, right? Is to push and to test and see where he falls in this weird dynamic of wanting to be an independent young man and still being my son who needs to learn things. And what is his motive? Well, his motive, well, again, whether he realizes it or not, is to find out where he falls in the hierarchy of our relationship. He doesn't understand it right now. And so he's testing and he's poking and he's prodding and he's seeing where he falls and where he stands and how it's all going to work out. Completely natural. I can appreciate that. And because I understand it for what it is, a natural thing, in fact, a healthy thing, I can approach it in a meaningful way, a productive way, and we can drive on. Now, counter that with, let's say, a peer at work who started around the same time you did, who's vying for the same position that you are. Well, what is that individual's intent and motive? Well, their motive is to get the promotion. If a promotion or a new job opportunity comes available, their motive is to get that promotion. And that means that they're competing against you, right? Some people like to say the things like, oh, there's no competition. No, there's competition. If there's a job available and there's you and one other guy or one other gal at work who's vying for that position, I hope that you're going to pursue that in a noble way, in an honorable way. But let's not assume that everybody's going to do it that way. And so they may be throwing you under the bus. They may be making up lies about you. They may be manipulating you or a boss or whoever's doing the hiring. You need to understand that. You need to know the game. You need to know the rules of the game. And although you may want to be honorable and noble and do it the right way, please understand that not everybody's like that. And if you can understand that and recognize what people's motives and intentions are, then you give yourselves more armor and more ammo to be able to do this thing the right way and to be able to secure your interests and the things that you're after. You don't want people to be able to advance their position on you. Again, maintain your frame, but you have to know what people's motives and intentions are. And if you understand, then you can create a better course of action, which I'm going to get to here shortly, for moving forward. So again, point number one is know that people are actively working against you, whether they're doing it intentionally or subconsciously. And number two is you need to evaluate what people's motives and intentions actually are. And when you do, you'll be able to formulate a better course of action. Number three, you need to establish, communicate, and uphold boundaries. There's three parts to that: establish, communicate, and uphold boundaries. Establishing the boundaries just means what I will and won't tolerate. Communicating the boundaries means that I'm going to share with other people what I will and won't tolerate. And then maintaining the boundaries is that if somebody does cross the line, that you fire the warning shot if needs be. Hey, I won't be talked to that way. I won't be treated that way. Or if somebody does something outside of the stated expectation, hey, you failed to meet the standard or the expectation. Here's what I expect moving forward. And if you can do that, great, we can continue our relationship. If you can't do that or refuse to do that, then we're going to redefine our relationship. That's romantic relationships. That's a client advisor relationship. That's an employee and employer relationship, but it's a 3-part component. Again, establish what they are. What will you tolerate and what will you not? If we go back to jiu-jitsu and somebody's in my mount, I'm not going to tolerate somebody climbing my mount and getting me in a vulnerable position. That's not okay with me. Okay, so I need to establish the boundary. I've thought about it in my mind. I don't want this person getting an advantage over me. I need to communicate that. Now, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, the way you communicate it is actually move into the move, right? So how do you defend against this? Literally framing with your arms or your knee or another part of your body to make sure there's separation between you and that individual. And upholding it is being capable, and again, we're going back to jiu-jitsu, being capable of actually defending against that advancement. But in your relationship, it's talking with your wife and saying, hey, you know what? You will not talk to me like that because I've told you we're going to respect each other. We're going to communicate with each other effectively. And right now you're not doing either. So we're going to disengage from this conversation until you're ready to meet this expectation. That goes both ways, by the way. And my wife has told me that. Hey, you're not going to talk to me like that. And every time she's ever said that, which isn't a lot, by the way, but every time she's ever said that, I've honored that because I recognize, oh, this is her line in the sand. Got it. It's important to know. It's healthy to know, even in the most intimate of relationships. Same thing with a client. You know, if you've got an appointment, for example, with a client at noon and that client shows up at 12:10 and they say, oh, you know, sorry, I'm late. I had these things going on. And you say, oh, it's okay. You know, is it okay? No, it's not okay. That person doesn't respect your time. And so if it were my client, I would say, look, I understand that you have things going on. I also have things going on. I have other clients. I have other responsibilities and obligations. So I expect and ask that you make our meetings on time. And since you're 10 minutes late, we have 10 minutes less to talk because we're done at 1:00. I'm not going to 1:10. I'm going to 1 if it's 12:10 right now. There has to be some level of accountability built into your boundaries. And if you're not upholding the boundaries, by the way, guys, it doesn't mean that you're nice. It doesn't mean that you're being a nice guy. It means most of the time, in my experience, is that you're being weak, that you're afraid. And I get it. The first time you uphold a boundary is going to be very difficult. The 10th time, the 100th time, the 1,000th time, the 10,000th time you've upheld a boundary, it's not very difficult. And by the way, by establishing, communicating, and upholding the boundaries frequently, you'll take care of a lot of these things on the front end. When I was in my financial planning practice and I was meeting with clients, I told them, hey, look, if we're going to work together, here's some expectations that I have of you. Here's some expectations you can have of me. Do you have any expectations that I didn't hit on? We need to establish this. We need to figure this out. And one of my expectations was that you show up for appointments on time. If we have a meeting at 12, you show up at 12 or earlier, period. End of story. And if you're not going to do that, then I'll wish you well, give you what you need, and you're out on your journey because I got other people to work with. All right. Beating a dead horse here. So that's number 3, establish, communicate, uphold boundaries. Number 4 is disengage when, so there's 2 different things you can do here. You can either defend or disengage, right? When people cross the boundaries, cross the line, you can do one of 2 things. You can defend or disengage, and both are acceptable. You're not quitting if you disengage. Sometimes defending is important because if you want to maintain a relationship with that individual, then you might need to just defend the boundary. But if you aren't interested in that because they continue to press and cross the line, then you need to disengage from that completely. Look, we've had these conversations. We've talked about this. You continue to not show up on time. It's clear to me that you don't respect my time. It's clear to me that the boundaries that we've talked about and we've agreed to aren't important to you, but they are important to me. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and let you go on about your business, let you go on your way, do your thing. Look, I'm even talking about leaving an employment. A lot of guys ask me, like, when's the best time to leave an employer? I'm not saying you need to be reckless. You should have things going on in the background where your finances and everything will be taken care of. But if an employer continues to ask you to step over your morals, or is doing something unethical, or is not advancing you the way that you feel like maybe you should, and you've had these conversations, then, at some point you got to disengage, because this individual has proven time and time again that they're not interested in upholding and maintaining and honoring and respecting the boundaries that you've established. So disengaging is a completely respectable and appropriate form of maintaining your frame. I had one of my early mentors tell me a story one time about him going into his boss because he was planning on starting his own financial planning practice. And he told his boss how he's going to do this. And long story short, his boss said, "You'll never make it. You'll never be able to do it, blah, 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 blah." Gave him all the reasons why he should stay. There's another lesson there I can tell you here in a minute. And I'll never forget what that mentor told me. He said, "I'd rather live in a cardboard box the rest of my life than be your little bitch." That's maintaining your frame. That's believing in yourself enough that you won't be trampled on, that you won't be walked on, and that you believe in yourself. And again, I'm not saying be reckless, because that could be reckless. If you don't have something else lined up or you don't have a plan, that could be reckless. But that mentality is the right mentality. The way you go about administering it is tact. And that's important too. The other little story, the little side-off story I was going to tell you there is that you never want to ask for advice from somebody who has a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. So for example, if you're planning on starting your own business, you don't want to ask your current employer if they think that's a good idea. Why? Because they have a vested interest in you not starting the business and you continuing to work with them. So never ask advice from somebody about your future who has a vested interest. It's a conflict of interest, in fact, but a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. It's not smart. It's not a good idea. You need to get that perspective from other people, from outside sources. All right, so number 4 was disengage, but I also add defend. You either defend or you disengage, and both are appropriate and both are acceptable. You need to decide where to go. Number 5, this is important. Do not unnecessarily react to emotion. And notice I threw in the word unnecessary, because look, guys, here's the thing. Emotions are an indicator. That's all they are. They're just telling you, hey, things are right, things are wrong, things are off, things feel right, you're good, hey, you're not good, you should be afraid, or you're in danger. It's just an indicator. And so what most of us will do as men is we'll react and respond based on these emotions that we're experiencing. Hey, that feels good. I'm going to do more of that. Hey, that doesn't feel good. I'm going to do less of that. You need to be very cognizant and aware of what your emotions are trying to tell you and what they're trying to teach you. And then you can react and respond based on what you're experiencing. But I don't want you to do it unnecessarily, because I've been around people who, get angry for whatever reason, and then they blow up and they explode, and then they just leave a wake of collateral damage in their path because they don't know how to appropriately respond to the emotion they're experiencing. So please understand, I'm not saying do not react or respond to emotion. I'm saying do not unnecessarily react or respond to emotion. Because what you end up doing is leaving yourself vulnerable, making stupid decisions, and then ultimately putting yourself in a worse position. If, for example, your wife comes to you and talks to you about an issue that you happen to get upset about, if you blow up at her and you completely lose your mind and break down and lose all of your framing, you just undermined your own efforts. You no longer have the same level of credibility and authority and influence over her, and you might explode in a way that undermines what ultimately you want, which is to have the influence, to have the credibility and the authority with her. So disengage if you need to, even temporarily, to understand what's happening right now. Man, I'm pissed. I'm fired up. Okay, stop for a second. Right? Disengage if you can in the appropriate situation from the environment and start thinking about this stuff so that when you come back to it with your wife, for example, you can do it with a level head and say, hey, hon, I'm angry or I'm upset because of X, Y, and Z. And it's okay to be upset, but it's not okay to respond unnecessarily and inappropriately to the emotion of being upset. Those are two different things. The emotion and the response, they're not one and the same. When people are angry, they say, well, when I get angry, I go crazy. Two different things. Anger, response. They're not married. They're different. They're exclusive. I'm angry, and then we have a choice as men to decide how we respond to that anger. And sometimes we need to disengage temporarily, come back with a level head and a clear approach, and communicate with our wife or our child or our employer or our employee or our client or whoever it is you're dealing with in a level, rational, mature way of going about doing it. All right, number 6, maintain the long-term perspective. If you're so wrapped up in what's going on right now, like what's current, hey, I'm pissed and I got to deal with this, and chill for a second, because what you're worried about right now probably won't matter in 2 years. It probably won't matter in 2 minutes or 2 hours. And yet you're treating it like it's the end of the universe. It's the apocalypse. Your wife comes to you with upsetting news or something. It's not the apocalypse, guys. Or a client comes to you and says, hey, I no longer work together. Your life isn't over. Or even your employer comes to you and says, hey, I'm sorry, we've got to let you go. It's not over. Okay. You may be out of a job, and that sucks. I'm not saying it doesn't, but your life isn't over. All right. There's going to be other jobs. There's going to be other opportunities. There's going to be other ways to make money. Long-term perspective. All right. If you look at it in that short window of time and your boss comes to you and says, hey, we've been really having a really hard time because of this response to COVID. And unfortunately, I've had to let go 50% of my staff. And you're that individual I have to let go. And you blow up and you cause a scene and you leave a wake of collateral damage in your path because you're so focused on what's happening currently and not thinking about the long-term vision. Man, you're burning all those bridges and you look like a fool. And you just crumble physically and mentally and emotionally. You think your boss is going to think highly of you down the road? You think the other people that watched your little scene, your little temper tantrum, are going to think highly of you? And then when you get home and you complain to your wife and you gripe and you moan and you bitch to her, do you think that fosters and bolsters your credibility as a father and a husband and the leader of your home? No, it undermines it. So deep breath. Relax. Figure out what's going on. Think about this from the long-term perspective. It doesn't mean it's going to suck less. You losing a job is going to suck, even if you're thinking about the long-term approach. But you ought to be thinking about, okay, well, like this sucks. Let me position, let me move around. If it was in the jiu-jitsu world, let me shrimp away, or let me establish that frame, put my hand in the right place. He caught me, he got around my guard. Okay, yeah, I'm in trouble here. I can't freak out, because if I freak out, it's going to make things worse. But hey, take a deep breath, think about it, establish the frame. What do I need to do next? How do I get one of my feet in? How do I get back into guard? Breathe. Long-term, not the short-term game. So let's recap. So number 1, we've got know that people are going to actively work against you, consciously or even subconsciously. Number 2 is evaluate what people are doing and why. What is their reason for doing it, and what advancement are they trying to make happen? Number 3 is establish, communicate, and uphold boundaries. Number 4 is either defend or disengage. Both are appropriate in the right set of circumstances. Number 5, do not unnecessarily react to your emotions. Number 6, maintain that long-term perspective over the short-term results. And then number 7 is eliminate your ego. All right, you got kicked in the nuts. You lost your job. Your wife wants a divorce. Your client doesn't want to work with you anymore. You're dealing with a medical condition. You got sued. I mean, there's You got in a car accident. There's so many things that can happen. All right. And it sucks because it's a referendum on you, right? You lose your job and you think, well, okay, so I'm not good enough. And that goes back to that question that John Eldredge talks about. Do I have what it takes? And when you get fired, the answer is no, you don't have what it takes. And that sucks. That's a hit, man. That hurts your ego. But when we focus on the ego versus focusing on the results of our lives over a long period of time, we end up making stupid decisions. We say something to our spouse that we don't mean. We burn a bridge with a previous employer that we shouldn't have burned. We eliminate and blow up relationships with clients that maybe we could have circled back around to down the road under different circumstances. And we make a mess. And as I said earlier, we leave that wake of collateral damage in our path because we're so focused on maintaining the pride and the ego and the arrogance that we can't think about the results, the ultimate results that we're after. Do you really care about that one client that you lost? Or do you just truly and genuinely want to serve people, advance in your career, feel some level of meaning and significance in your life, and put food on the table and a roof over your family's head? That's the results that you want. And yeah, losing a client sucks, but okay, learn from it. Don't let the ego get in the way. Learn from it, grow, develop. A lot of guys will say, well, I lost that client, so it's not meant to be. No, it just meant that client relationship isn't going to work out. So what can I learn from it? And how can I move forward with more skill, a better outlook on it, and then ultimately the better results? Guys, it's very, very important that we maintain our frame. And I think emotion and ego I think is related very closely with emotion, but I think that these are the things that get in the way more than anything else. And we do stupid things. We're emotional. We're irrational creatures. So I'm telling you to take a step back and think about maintaining that frame. Be a man, act like a man, maintain that long-term strategy, that long-term approach. And you'll be less likely to be immature and wild and inappropriate and leave that damage in your path. Okay. Let me recap. We'll call it a day. Please share with me, talk with me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're doing your social media thing, and let me know how this is serving you. Let other people know, because again, as I started this podcast, we need to share, right? The overlords of social media don't want this information getting out. And I know why. I've been talking about it for 6 years. It's because they don't want strong, critically thinking, independent men operating, helping each other out, serving each other. They don't want that because that's a threat to them just getting their way and getting what they want. I'm not about that. You're not about that, but I need your help in supporting this mission. So let me recap. Number one, know that people are going to actively work against you, subconsciously or consciously. Their alignment, their interests are not always aligned. Number two, evaluate what people are doing and why. Number three, establish, communicate, and uphold the boundaries. Number four, defend or disengage when you experience these things. Both are appropriate in the right set of circumstances. Number five, do not unnecessarily react to your emotions. That's where you do stupid things. Number six, maintain a long-term perspective. It sucks in the short term, but over the long haul, it might be better that this thing, whatever you're experiencing, is happening right now. And number seven, last here, is eliminate your ego, focus on the results. Guys, I hope this served you. I hope it helps you. I want to see men who maintain their frames. When I see guys who deal with difficult situations and I see them handle it like men, that's somebody I'm inspired by. That's somebody I'm inspired to follow. And that's somebody I think highly of. I want you to be that man. I personally want to be that man, somebody who can maintain their frame in any situation. It's more productive. It's more effective. You're going to be more fulfilled and you're going to be able to serve people better. And that is, guys, what exactly we want. All right, guys, we'll be back next week. Until then, go out there, take action, maintain your frame, and become the man you are meant to be.